Volka watched the transmission timer burn red for 16 seconds longer than protocol allowed. It had arrived from Earth's Brand Administration for Human Welfare via encrypted diplomatic uplink, Earth-sealed, top-cleared, and polite as poison. The subject line read, Inquiry. Unresponsive designated enclave. Vestan Reach Charter. E-213. She skimmed it twice, flagged it, and didn't forward it.
Not yet.
Instead, she turned to the tinted glass of her office viewport and watched orbital traffic glide past, 1,000 cold lights arcing across the curvature of Bastion Station's outer shell. Vestan Reach was in the Mino Verge sector, 3 jumps into the outer rim, buried in dead orbital drift space. A remote asset world, registered as a resource protection enclave, which was company speak for ours, not yours. Officially, it housed only leased laborers, drone farms, and a rotational garrison to keep the metrics within tolerance. Unofficially, there were more. Families, dependents, shadow registrants. People too small to measure, too quiet to report. Every outpost had them. They came with the workers and stayed for the air. Some even built schools. Earth, by contrast, shouldn't have cared. Earth hadn't cared in 30 years. But they sent this. And worse, they cited the Human Welfare Continuity Charter, a document so obsolete it wasn't even acknowledged in Vantidine's legal stack. Volke pulled up the signal chain logs and ran them backward. No outbound contact from Vestan Reach in over 20 days. Planetary systems all listed as green until the moment they stopped pinging. No thermal spikes, no automated distress. Just silence. She tapped her slate twice and flagged a Level 4 coordination session with the Directorate. 2 minutes later, she received authorization for a private use case of Room 17C, a closed threshold boardroom with surveillance restriction protocols and auditory dampeners. 3 minutes after that, the meeting was set. They gathered 1 hour later, no time wasted, no names given. The kind of room where everyone knew why they were there, and no one planned to take responsibility. Sector Director Ven arrived first in profile, tall, unhurried, dressed in matte formal blacks with a muted company sigil folded discreetly into his breast panel. He took a seat at the far end of the glass table and pulled up the last surveillance pull from the Vestan orbital relay. Still frame only? He asked without looking up. Volka nodded. Telemetry degraded gradually. No final dump. It died clean. Then it was turned off. Or shorted internally. Ven didn't bother to answer. Next came Chief of Defense Harlan, accompanied by a mid-ranking aide who handed him a slate and exited without acknowledgement. Harlan seated himself with the deliberate weight of someone who'd been in the company long enough to get promoted sideways. His neck showed the faint ridge of a spinal anchor, likely a hardened neural port from his time in forward action. Looks like sabotage, he said. Probably labor. We've had unrest across the verge. Heat signatures suggest bunkers, maybe arms caches. Volka raised an eyebrow. There are no labor groups licensed for self-defense on Vestan. Harlan smiled without mirth. Then it wasn't them. Before Volka could press further, the room chilled. Auditor Captain San entered without announcement. Her uniform was bloodless gray, unmarked, devoid of rank and pristine. She didn't speak. She never did, unless prompted by the board directly. She sat near the center of the table and folded her hands. Volke suppressed a sigh. Last to arrive was Ambassador Ren Chao, Earth's appointed observer to the Outer Systems Council, and on paper, a liaison between planetary interests and corporate enforcement zones. In practice, he was a grandfathered relic held in place for PR optics, a civil nod to a government that no longer issued orders. Still, he walked with slow dignity. His tailored robe bore the minimalist blue insignia of Earth administration, a hemisphere, not a globe, just half. He remained standing. I would like this recorded, Chao said. Ven answered smoothly. Request denied. Operational security parameters. I represent Sovereign Earth. And this is a Directorate coordination meeting, not a planetary hearing. Chao's jaw tightened, but he did not argue further. He took his seat across from Volka. A silence followed, filled only by the low hum of ambient filtration. Then Ven began. We've lost contact with Vestan Reach. 21 days silent. Enclave relay is down, drones off-grid, garrison telemetry terminated. Possible causes? Chao asked. Could be insurgency. Could be solar interference. Could be a ground-side reactor failure, Harlan said. We'll deploy investigation assets within 72 hours. I've read your response draft, Chao said flatly. It doesn't mention the missing population count. Labor is replaceable, Harlan said. And the children? That made even San glance up, though only slightly. Volka took the opportunity to speak. 2 we knew about, both unlicensed. 1 attached to a logistics officer, 1 smuggled in. The rest weren't in the manifest. So they're outside company protection, Ven concluded. Irrelevant. Chow gave a tired smile. So you acknowledge the company has no legal obligation to investigate? No, Volka said carefully. We acknowledge the company has no contractual obligation. Legality is subject to jurisdiction. That's a very expensive way to say we don't care. Harlan interjected. Do you care, Ambassador? Or are you worried about what your donors back home will say when the next netcast cycle turns this into a humanitarian optics event? Chow didn't respond, but he folded his hands. Volk leaned forward slightly. We're proposing an internal investigation. Vantadyne will absorb the operational cost, seal the site, and deliver a public summary of the findings to your office. In exchange, Earth formally acknowledges the Enclave as a self-managed economic zone under provisional charter. And if the findings are disturbing, they won't be. I'd like assurances. Ven smiled thinly. We don't give assurances, Ren. We offer resolutions. Chow closed his eyes briefly. At least allow an observer, a third party from the Outer Systems Coalition. Harlan was already shaking his head. Security perimeters black tier. No observers. Then Earth will issue a formal protest. You'll issue a tweet, Ven said, and we'll respond with a condolence fund. Volka, despite herself, glanced at San. The auditor captain was watching her. Not Harlan. Not Chow. Her. There it was. The warning. Chow stood slowly. You say you want to contain panic, but you've contained the truth so tightly no one will know whether to be afraid. Ven tapped the surface of the table. A document appeared in midair. Standardized language, legalese, mild in tone, final in power. Sign this, he said, and the investigation begins tonight. Chow read none of it. He pressed his finger to the pad and left the room without another word. The moment the door hissed shut, Harlan let out a breath. Fucking planet huggers. Ven dismissed the document, eyes already scanning a new data feed. Send in Recon Group Echo. Full drop. Live telemetry routed through operations. Scrub the raw archive before transmission. Flag any anomalies under Tier 5 containment. And if we find something real? Volka asked. Ven glanced up. Then we price it. Volka returned to room 17C 12 hours later. The temperature hadn't changed, but the air had. The room felt sharp now, cutting, angular, as if the walls had leaned in overnight. No light but the table's built-in hollow panel, which pulsed softly under standby mode. Outside Bastion Station's orbital halo turned silently, blinking amber with perimeter beacons. One of the moons below was eclipsed, its outline a soft gouge against a pale blue ring. Ven was already seated, reviewing something through retinal scan. She knew better than to ask what. San was there too, again not announced, again silent, a ghost of authority with a perfect memory and no apparent pulse. Chow arrived 5 minutes late, which meant deliberately. This time he carried a paper folder. It was the kind of gesture that belonged to a world long dead, and he knew it. When he placed the folder on the table, he did it with ceremonial slowness. The company wouldn't care about the contents, but they would notice the theater. Volk understood the move. Chow wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to be seen negotiating. He sat and said nothing. Ven didn't look up. Hard copy? That's adorable. Chow folded his hands. A letter of intent from the Outer Systems Coalition, endorsed by the Brand Administration, requesting shared jurisdiction over the Vestan Reach investigation. Volka arched an eyebrow. Jurisdiction over a company enclave? Provisional, Chow replied. Humanitarian exception. Unresponsive labor zones fall under Charter D. There is no Charter D. There is now. Drafted by the Coalition Civil Ethics Panel 2 weeks ago. Harlan entered last, flanked by a junior compliance attaché who looked about 12 and carried a tablet too large for her hands. She remained in the corner. Harlan dropped his bulk into the chair beside San and nodded toward Chow's folder. Let me guess. The Concerned Community Clause. Chow nodded. Page 3. Volky tapped her slate, pulled the draft from a mirrored copy, and scanned it. It was real. Toothless, but real. It wouldn't stop the company, but it would slow them. That meant headlines. That meant shareholder unrest. Ven sighed, finally looking up. We are not ever sharing jurisdiction on a black-tier resource site. It's not black-tier if it's off-grid. Then we upgrade the classification, retroactively. Chow shook his head. There are 312 Earth-bonded dependents in the registry for Vestan Reach. You can suppress data, delay audits. But if even one refugee pod pings an open channel, the story writes itself. And we'll make sure they don't. The words hung there, flat, brutal, not shouted, just said. San looked up from her notes. Not to Chow, to Volka. The warning again. Volka straightened her collar. The company acknowledges the strategic risk in appearing negligent. Our internal recommendation is to initiate an independent response, provide oversight through managed data flow, and structure Earth's role as participatory advisory. Window dressing, Chow said. Exactly, Harlan replied. I'd like to propose a joint task force, coalition observers, independent technicians, unarmed. No, Ven said. Volka added quickly. But we are prepared to issue a licensed report, backed by the Directorate and reviewed by an internal compliance triad. Chow exhaled. Meaningless. It's not meaningless if it's ours, Ven said. And let's not pretend, Ren, that Earth has any real leverage. You're a mascot. The coalition is fragmented. The UNR is a brand. The only thing you represent is a liability index. That liability, Chow said calmly, is up 37% since your blackout. And still trading, Ven replied, so let's not ruin a working market. The table dimmed slightly. Volka's slate pinged a private signal. She flicked her eyes down and a secure window opened. It wasn't tagged with a sender, just a header. Pre-loss telemetry, VST and RCH, redacted brief. She read it, then she read it again. She didn't flinch, but her pulse did tick upward. The table tracked it. She knew Sen would have noted the biometric shift. Volka looked up. We've reviewed internal data. Pre-loss scans from the orbital relay show thermal signatures inconsistent with standard colony operations. Chow leaned in slightly. How inconsistent? Subterranean, mobile, high density, atypical mass signatures. Sabotage? We don't know, but the signatures don't match human profiles or machinery. That gave Chow pause. He was good at keeping his face level, trained probably, but something flickered behind his eyes. You're saying biological? We're saying unexplained. Harlan leaned back and cracked his knuckles. You want a joint task force. What happens if your observers see something you can't explain? We report it. To who? Van asked. Earth? The coalition? The public. You'll trigger a hysteria cycle before the second day's media cycle clears. Chow didn't answer. San spoke for the first time. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Public escalation triggers contract null protocols. Earth signed. Everyone went silent. Volk looked at her startled, not because San was wrong. San was never wrong, but because she hadn't been authorized to speak. Chow's face went rigid. You would null the entire charter? It would not be our decision. Earth agreed to sovereignty clauses that include information stability. Leaks nullify protection agreements, retroactively. Harlan grunted, impressed. Well said. San returned to silence. Chow looked to Volka. You believe this, liaison? Volka hesitated. I believe that if we do this wrong, she said, we open a door we can't close. If it's sabotage, we handle it. If it's insurgency, we erase it. But if it's neither... She didn't finish. They all heard it anyway. Ven stood. The meeting was over. We'll issue a statement, he said. You'll get a named liaison to the response group. Civilian, unarmed, non-voting. You'll get daily summaries. No raw data. No satellite feeds. No biological scans without director-level clearance. And if I object? Chow asked. Then your objection is noted, Ven said. The door hissed open. Ven left without another word. Harlan followed. San remained seated for 3 seconds longer, then stood and left silently. Chow didn't move. Volka remained across from him. Both of them watched the door seal. That wasn't a warning, Chow said. No. That was a veiled threat. No, she said again. That was a scheduled one. He nodded, rubbed his face. Do you think there's anything down there? I think there was, and I think now there's not. That's worse. Chow opened the folder again, slid a single page across to her. It was old-fashioned, a newsprint clipping. An early map of the Vestan colony, hand-labeled sectors, habitat zones, a school marked in red. Volka tapped it. This was never about ethics, was it? No. Optics? Chow looked up. Votes. She nodded. Then stood. I'll be in touch, she said. Do you believe in aliens, Volka? She paused. "No," she said. "I believe in margins." Then she left. When they returned to room 17C, the atmosphere had changed. Same table, same glass walls, same angled lighting and sanitized air. But the purpose was different now. The conversation had moved past discovery, past debate. Now it was just logistics. Ven stood at the holo display, arms behind his back, watching a sector-level overlay of the Mino Verge. Vestan Reach blinked softly near the edge. Red. Flagged. Locked. No new signals had come from the surface. No thermal. No digital. No biometric pings from emergency tags. The place was a black hole. San entered without ceremony. Volka followed, holding a sealed courier packet. Behind them, Chow. No attaché this time. Just him. Volka slid the packet onto the table. This is your final access credential. Scoped to an Earth-cleared relay. You'll receive official updates every 30 hours. Not a duplicate. Not an update. He'd already authorized the investigation. This wasn't permission. It was abdication. Chow didn't touch it. Ven spoke without turning. The first team is prepped to depart in 6 hours. 32 Marines, engineering specialists, 1 company-grade officer. No Earth presence. Chow said nothing. Volka watched him closely. She'd known politicians who got angry. He wasn't angry. He was done. Resigned to a result he couldn't stop and didn't believe in. But resignation was a kind of silence Vantadine liked. It meant agreement. Chow finally looked up. You're treating this like a maintenance op. It is, Ven said. A colony went dark, 15,000 souls. 14,912, San corrected, almost gently. Volky didn't ask how San knew the number. Of course she knew. They all did. The silence was never from ignorance, only convenience. Chow turned to her. Do you want to tell me how you know that number if no one's been there yet? San said nothing. Volk stepped in. Ambassador, we're offering a stable narrative. Internal response. Structured data flow. Your people get access. We get control. There's no need to escalate. No, Chow said softly. Only to forget. Ven finally turned. This isn't about memory. It's about cost. If we tell people something went wrong, they'll demand safety. If we tell them something unfathomable went wrong, they'll demand meaning. Either way, we lose the story. That's not good for you. That's not good for us. You think this is still a communications problem? We know it isn't. Volka turned to Chow. Her voice lowered. Whatever's down there, if it's profitable, you won't see it again. Chow blinked. He didn't even try to look surprised. And if it isn't, then we'll make sure no one else sees it either. San, seated with hands folded, finally spoke. Profitability isn't the concern. Containment is. Volka met her eyes. Same thing. Chow laughed once. Bitter, dry. He leaned back, defeated. I should have walked out in the first meeting. But you didn't. Because I thought you still needed us. We do, Volke said. We need your silence. We need your signature. That's how we make it legal. And if I refuse? Ven gestured to the packet again. Then you'll be listed as absent. That doesn't stop us. It just changes the phrasing. Chow stared at the folder. He didn't move for a long moment. Then he reached out and pressed his fingerprint to the authorization seal. The slate pinged. Jurisdiction approved. Authority delegated. Oversight surrendered. It was done. No drama. No fanfare. Just a flick of heat against a sensor pad. That was all it took to approve an operation that would flatten a colony and erase whatever didn't fit the budget forecast. Chow stood without another word and walked out. The door hissed shut behind him. Ven returned to his station. Send orders to AS Command. They're greenlit. Volky didn't move. Neither did San. After a moment, San rose and followed Ven out. Volka remained standing beside the table. She tapped her slate once. A window opened. Internal correspondence. She logged the authorization as signed, uploaded the record, and routed it through legal. The system confirmed the entry. Case 991-7Z initiated. Jurisdiction. Sole Vantadine oversight. Risk category, non-disclosure critical. She stared at it for a moment, then whispered aloud to no one. The unknown is billable. The unknowable is proprietary. "23 days in slip space is long enough for a Marine to forget gravity." It returned with a lurch, as artificial mass reasserted itself across the decks of Kensington Ledge just moments before inertial dampers kicked in. Rook kept his balance through it, boots magnetized to the command platform, his hand resting on the edge of the tactical table. No one stumbled. They were trained for it. But still, everyone on the bridge tensed. It wasn't re-entry that made them uneasy. It was what came next. The viewport shuttered open in sections, unveiling Vestan Reach from high orbital range. The planet filled a third of the display. From here it should have looked alive. Green banded equator zones, mining plumes rising from heat vents, thermal lines from habitation modules and drone logistics lanes threading the surface like neon veins. Instead, they saw nothing. No lights, no beacons, no movement. "Transition complete," came the voice from helm control. Lieutenant Marin, calm as ever. "Slip core spooling down. Exterior systems restored." "Confirm location," Rook said. "Confirmed," Marin replied. "Vestan Reach geosynchronous. Zero drift." "But—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The comms officer, Ames, was already shaking his head. "No contact! No signals on company, coalition, or civilian bands. No locator pings. Surface arrays are cold." Captain Lath stepped onto the bridge from the primary corridor behind Rook, face pale and unslept. "Put us into high-scan orbit," Lath said. "Engage full atmospheric sweep. I want thermal overlays and terrain comparison. Use archive maps from Site 9 for baseline." The bridge moved with crisp silence. Rook watched the scans come in, data unfurling like peeling skin. There was damage, visible and mapped. Structures collapsed or blackened. Craters pocked across 3 of the colony's 12 established grids, particularly near the drone foundry and the water reclamation spires. It wasn't orbital bombardment. The blast patterns were too localized, the debris fields tight and controlled. These were precision strikes. But from what? And why hadn't anyone responded? "There's no sign of evacuation," said Ames. "No escape pods launched. No secondary flare markers. The pads are still loaded. Some of the logistics crawlers look like they were halfway through loading cycles." Rook said nothing. His HUD synced with the incoming telemetry. There were no heat signatures, no human biosigns, no ambient broadcasts from personal slates, no tracker implants chirping in the void. Either everyone had left without signaling or no one had left. He shifted his weight slightly, letting the grav plate recalibrate. The bridge quieted again. Captain Lath approached, older than Rook by 15 years, with graying temples and a deep scar across his right palm. Company punishment, maybe, or one of those early border skirmishes the board never acknowledged. He stopped beside Rook and looked at the main screen. "This colony was supposed to be clean," Lath said, voice low. "Non-combatant, resource control, mining, some biotech handling, minor population. And a rotating security detail," Rook added. "Nothing large, 2 platoons max." "They didn't send distress?" Lath nodded slowly. "I've had 4 deployments like this," the captain murmured. "Each time we knew what we were landing into. Had a contact chain, a fail-safe worst-case protocols. This one—" He trailed off, frowning at the data stream. "I don't like it." Rook agreed. He just didn't say it out loud. The company's brief had been sparse. Vestan Reach classified as a resource protection enclave, established 23 years ago, tasked with lithium ice harvesting, drone tech maintenance, and secondary terraforming trials. No flagged unrest. No outstanding reports of sabotage. No recorded security breaches in the last cycle. Now it was a dead rock. Rook tapped the feed for outer orbital mapping. "Anything unusual in high band?" "Negative," Marin said. "Geostationary orbit's mostly clear. Old company relays, some nav buoys, debris trail from a broken weather scanner." "Wait," said Ames. "Got a powered object. Sector 12, 91 degrees over equator. Running cold but drawing current from solar array. No IF. Not one of ours." "Put it on screen." The image flickered, then snapped into focus. It was a satellite. Roughly the size of a skiff. Hull bristling with antennae and articulated panels. It rotated slowly, trailing a faint halo of ionized particles. Definitely not company. Not Union. Not black market kit either. The shape was wrong. No visible thrust vents, no service ports, no readable maintenance stamps. Just a smooth hull with strange ridged seams running along its length, like something grown rather than welded. "Any movement?" Lath asked. "Not yet. Passive scan only." "Let's keep it that way," Rook said. "Record everything." "Working on it," Marin replied. "Getting something strange. It's emitting. Very tight band. Focused transmission." "Where to?" A pause. "Deep space. No local target. But—" Rook turned. But what? It's locked to a fixed vector, Marin said, as if it's talking to something further out. Lath gave Rook a look that didn't need translation. This wasn't piracy. This wasn't protest. This was something else. And it had been here for a while. The silence broke first. Not with sound. There was none in orbit, but with a flicker of movement across the data feed. A spectral spike, barely a blip. But Rook saw it. So did Captain Lath. Signal fluctuation, Ames confirmed. The satellite's power curve just shifted. On screen, the anomalous object twitched in its rotation. One of its arms realigned, unfolding like a jointless limb. A narrow band of hull plates opened silently to reveal a hexagonal cavity. Not a port. A lens. Confirmed energy buildup, Marin reported. Source is internal. Charging cycle active. Rook stepped forward, already tapping his slate. Pull us back. 10 kilometers minimum. Too late. The satellite pulsed. A tight stream of light, green, white, and needle-thin, lashed across space and lanced the Kensington ledge along its dorsal flank. The ship groaned, not from inertia but from metal under thermal stress. A low alarm pinged across the bridge. Smoke hissed from a junction panel above the forward display. Direct hit! Auxiliary comm tower 2 is gone, Ames shouted. Deck 7 taking pressure loss! Seal bulkheads, Lath ordered. Reroute power from aft systems! Rook was already on the horn with engineering. Damage report. Containment breach in observation bay. 6 injured, 1 confirmed fatal, trying to stabilize the sector. That wasn't a beam. It punched through the outer hull like a scalpel. He turned to Lath. It's not scanning us. It's targeting. That was deliberate. The captain's jaw tightened. It didn't warn. It didn't ping. Just opened fire. It's not human, Rook said. Marin looked up from her display. It's cycling again. The image confirmed it. The satellite's central core was pulsing, internal coils glowing like breath beneath skin. It had no heat vents, no waste signature. Its power generation made no sense. Lath's voice hardened. Prep batteries. Engage forward rail cannons. A murmur from tactical. Rook turned. Lieutenant Bresch, his second, was watching the screen with narrowed eyes. Respectfully, sir, we might want to consider a passive break-off. We haven't confirmed its origin. It could be automated, responsive to threats. It fired first, Rook said. It might have been triggered by our scan. It targeted the comms tower, not random. Bresch hesitated. Rook stepped in close. I get the hesitation, but we don't have time to second-guess. That thing killed one of ours. Lath nodded once. Fire control, confirm lock. Locked. Target is static. Fire on my mark. The bridge waited. Mark. The Kensington ledge bucked as twin rail cannons along the keel discharged. 2 tungsten rounds, each 2 meters long and fired at 6,000 meters per second, punched through vacuum on magnetic tracks. The satellite reacted fast, but not fast enough. The first slug struck the armature housing, vaporizing one of its extended limbs in a flash of kinetic heat. The second hit the central hull, folding the casing like paper. A moment later, the satellite detonated. Not a chain reaction, but something slower, controlled. A peal of systems going dark, a hiss of escaping pressure. It didn't shatter. It collapsed. Target neutralized, tactical confirmed. Lath exhaled. Deploy salvage drone. I want anything that survives brought aboard. Rook kept his eyes on the viewport. Whatever that thing had been, it wasn't just watching the colony. It had been guarding it. 15 minutes later, the drone returned. The bridge airlock hissed open as a containment pod was transferred to the primary lab. The objects were logged, sealed, and reviewed on a remote screen inside the bridge's secondary briefing console. The overhead lighting dimmed, replaced by blue spectrum analysis. Captain Lath, Rook, and Chief Science Officer Dr. Mallon stood before the display. This is what was left, Mallon said. On screen, 4 separate fragments. Each was visibly alien in design and not just in aesthetics. The materials themselves were wrong. Composition? Rook asked. We don't know, Mallon said. Try. The outer casing is some sort of composite alloy, but none of the lattice conforms to known metallurgical patterns. It's not carbon fiber, not metallic foam. It's layered, organic in structure but not biological. Organic how? Like bone, with purpose-built tension ridges and stress absorption, but grown perfectly. Rook leaned in. One fragment in particular caught his eye. A small disc, no wider than a sidearm barrel, lined with faint markings. What about that? Mallon rotated the image. The etching was tight, recessed slightly into the surface, not ornamental but purposeful, like a circuit built into the structure. "Unknown function," she said. "The etchings aren't language, at least not as we define it. There's no repetition, no grammar. They may not be visual symbols at all. It's possible they're conductive pathways. Built into the shell? Or part of it. These pieces weren't designed to come apart. This wasn't a satellite in the traditional sense. It was a node." Lath frowned. "Node for what?" Malin hesitated. "We don't know." A long silence. Rook folded his arms. "Then we assume it's hostile, and we assume it's not the only one." Lath didn't argue. In his quarters, hours later, Rook replayed the strike frame by frame. He watched the satellite fire, watched his comm tower vanish in a flash, watched the crew scramble on the bridge. He watched it all again with the audio muted. The object hadn't hesitated, hadn't communicated. It was designed to kill, but not like a missile platform. Its behavior was colder, measured, surgical, like it wasn't destroying enemies. It was eliminating variables. He pulled up historical logs from the company's deep space probe registry. Outbound missions in the region dated back 30 years. Names, launch dates, vectors. Out of 23 probes dispatched beyond Vestan Reach, only 6 returned. The others disappeared. And no one had cared. Not until now. Not until an entire colony had gone silent. He logged a report, voice-tagged and encrypted. "Commander Rook, AS. Tactical engagement complete. Anomalous object destroyed. 1 fatality, 6 injured. Wreckage recovered. Analysis indicates non-human origin. Recommend provisional threat escalation. Vestan Reach is not abandoned." It was silenced. He paused, then added quietly, "I don't think we were the first to come here, but I think we're the first to survive it." Commander Rook sat alone in the observation blister 2 decks below the bridge. The planet hung in the glass, mute and clouded with orbital dust. Vestan Reach had no moon, no orbital traffic, no beacon flashes, just one cold rock spinning through a volume of space that seemed to resist being mapped. He hadn't slept. The satellite debris had been logged, catalogued, and sealed by now. Medbay had stabilized the wounded. The casualty had been zipped and indexed. He hadn't even known the Marine's name. Deck 7 was still pressurized manually, and the ship's spine showed scorch along 3 dorsal corridors. But the colony, it stayed quiet. Rook scrolled through historical entries on his personal slate. The company's probe telemetry archive, even with officer clearance, was curated, pre-cleaned, pruned of contradictions. But if you traced the metadata, cross-referenced asset tags, and followed the things they didn't bother to redact properly, a pattern emerged. He traced the same 23 probes, this time deeper. Launched over a 32-year span, each had been aimed at the far verge of the Mino region, the informal boundary of Vantadine Reach space. Most were low investment. Micro-thrusters, passive recorders, AI navigators with a 2-week lifespan, disposable intelligence gatherers meant to map mineral-rich asteroid belts or long-cycle gravitational anomalies. 17 had failed to return. 5 had no launch record in the official registry. These were tagged under vague designations like Interspatial Recon, Asset Echo, or Pioneer Variant, Drift Class. The company had deployed them, but never declared them. And the last signal from each had pointed in roughly the same direction, a gravitationally quiet region 2.1 light-years beyond Vestan Reach. It had no formal name, just an old cartographer's note buried in a deprecated survey file. Void Sector 33D unstable return signal coherence. No natural mass orbitals. A dead zone. Rook tapped the coordinates into the nav system, then paused. There was no standing directive to proceed. The company's mission brief had been explicit. Investigate the loss of Vestan Reach, secure evidence, and re-establish orbital sovereignty. They had done all 3, but nothing in him felt finished. He stood, keyed the comms, and routed a high-priority message through encrypted relay back to Bastion Station. To Volky, Political Liaison, Sector Ops Bastion from CMDR. Rook, Ace Ops, Vestan Theater Status Discretionary Escalation Request. Subject, Deep Field Recon. Void, 33D Anomaly. Attachment, Satellite Engagement Report, Probe Convergence Overlay. He stared at the cursor before adding his final line. Recommend immediate company review. Awaiting instruction. He sent it, and waited. The response came 40 minutes later. It was audio only. Volka never sent visual unless she had to.
Commander.
Her voice was sharp, but not rushed. we've reviewed your data, confirmed the asset convergence pattern, confirmed satellite wreckage exhibits non-standard material composition. I've briefed Sector Defense and Asset Risk.
Pause.
You are instructed to hold position and await reinforcement. Cruiser Langley and 2 escort corvettes are being rerouted from the bleed. ETA 6 days.
Rook exhaled. He keyed the reply without standing. I don't think we have 6 days. Your ship is operational. You're secure. There's no immediate threat.
There wasn't a threat before we scanned that satellite either.
Silence on the line. He continued.
This isn't a stability op anymore. That colony didn't die from labor unrest. It was shut down. Surgically. No warning. No resistance. And whatever did it is still out there. More silence. Then... And if you're right?
Then we're already late.
Volka's voice dropped. Commander, you're not cleared to make that determination.
I'm not asking to act on it. I'm asking to look.
More silence. Rook leaned back in his chair, watching the glow of Vestan Reach shimmer across the lower deck tiles. It looked so harmless from here, like nothing had ever happened. Volka finally spoke again. There's pressure up here.
I know.
I'm being asked to preserve narrative cohesion. The company still has shareholders. They still expect quarterly summaries.
Summarize this, Rook said. You've lost 1 Marine. You've suffered minor damage. You've recovered debris of unknown origin.
The official report says it was a rogue satellite from a decommissioned pirate band that misfired after power decay.
That's bullshit and you know it.
I do,
she admitted.
But I know what I'm allowed to say.
Rook sat forward. I'm not asking for authorization. I'm asking for a window.
Define window.
4-day forward recon to 33D. Limited jump. 1 battalion. Passive scans only. Daily check-in. If we hit anything live, we pull back. Volka didn't reply immediately. Then she said,
Hold.
The line went dead for exactly 93 seconds. When it came back, she sounded more composed, colder.
You're approved for orbital survey extension. That's the tag. Use it. We'll load it into the mission stack so it appears sanctioned.
And unofficially?
You're on your own, Rook.
He nodded. Any warnings? He asked flatly.
Yes.
Another pause.
If you find something out there, Commander, don't try to understand it. Just log it and report. The company decides what it means.
The channel closed. The Kensington ledge reoriented 20 minutes later. The nav officer initiated the slipstream parameters. The crew received new orders under the header Field Recon Extension, Outer Survey. Officially, they were looking for lost orbital debris. Unofficially, they were heading into blank space. Rook stood at the center of the bridge as the jump capacitors powered up. Energy hummed through the deck plating. Gravlock anchors shivered under the sudden shift in mass projection. The viewport dimmed automatically as the slipstream window bloomed ahead. Green-white with thin striations of plasma dancing at its core. Behind them, Vestan Reach grew smaller, distant, diminished to a cold arc on the system horizon. Ahead, nothing. Not mapped, not claimed, not known. Rook felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not exactly. It was the awareness of absence, of being at the edge of something built not just without humans, but without the idea of humans. For the first time in his career, he didn't know what the mission was. He tapped the deck twice with his boot and gave the nod. Engage,